The American project, as we originally conceived of it, is pretty much dead. I define the American project as the idea that people can be left free as individuals, as families, and communities to live their lives as they see fit, as long as they accord the same freedom to everyone else, with the government ensuring a peaceful setting for those endeavors, but otherwise stepping aside. As libertarians put it, what the government needs to do is keep people from hurting each other and taking their stuff. And that's kind of a statement, a pretty good statement of what we think government should be doing. That's dead. And that's not an inflammatory statement. It's not a statement of despair. It's a statement of fact. We used to live under a presumption of freedom, that if we wanted to do something to our house, if we wanted to practice our vocation the way we wanted to, if we wanted to get together with our neighbors to solve social problems in a peaceful way, we could do this. And nobody was going to bother. We didn't have to ask permission. And now, as a statement of fact, we do have to ask permission for almost anything we do, as anybody in the audience who runs a small business knows, as anyone in the audience probably who's tried to do anything with any property that you own, you very likely know that. However, there is another consideration, that others of us, including myself, are shielded from a lot of these ways in which the old freedom to do what we want has been circumscribed. The regulatory state doesn't really affect me because I work for the American Enterprise Institute, and they have to deal with all that sort of stuff. Academicians also don't have to deal with a lot of this. Those of you who work for large corporations are buffered from a lot of this because you have departments within your corporation that have the sole function of taking care of all this stuff. But if you're talking about ordinary Americans who don't have those kinds of resources and those kinds of buffers, the degree to which the government at the state and the city and the federal level is now preventing you from living your life as you see fit, the extent of that has gotten quite extreme. Then the second proposition of the book is, though, that we can do something about it. And the operational plan, I will cut to the chase so you can have a context for the rest of my remarks. The operational plan is real simple. You identify regulations out of the 175,000 pages of the Federal Code of Regulations that are stupid or pointless, or that are enforced in stupid and pointless ways, and you make it possible for people just to ignore them. And how do you do that? You do that because they are backstopped by legal defense funds. And these are not legal defense funds that are restricted to defending people who are innocent of the charge against them. They will be defending people who are technically guilty of the charge against them. They have violated or ignored a stupid or pointless regulation. But the reason you want to defend them is that you want to litigate it to the max. Let me tell you this, the way that the book got written. This is a true story. This is why this book exists. My wife and I have a friend who runs a small business that, like most of the people in his occupation, hires almost exclusively Latino workers. All of his workers are documented. He's gotten them visas. They're here legally. He spends $20,000 to $30,000 a year on those visas. He pays for their airfares. He pays good wages. He's a model member of the community as well as being a model employer. And he has been harassed relentlessly by the federal government because there are all sorts of niggling little things that where he hasn't followed the rules. And sometimes he has been guilty of not adhering to one regulation because he really can't. He can't follow it. Such as, for example, he's supposed to have more native-born American workers than he has. And he can't get native-born American workers to work for him. And so he's fined for not having enough of them. Well, anyway, there was a series of these things. It cost him a lot of money and trouble. And at one point he said to the person from the regulatory agency, I am going to fight this in court. To which the bureaucrat said to him, you try that and we will put you out of business. And he knew that was true. And he knuckled under. And that made me so mad, truly angry, that I told my wife I just didn't want to hear any more about this because it was too upsetting. And then I had my epiphany. an image, I think it was on horseback. A guy in a pinstripe suit on horseback appears from nowhere, taps the bureaucrat in the shoulder and says, "We are taking this man's case. We are going to defend him with all of the resources available to us in this crazy legal system we have, which means we are going to make a lot of trouble for you. And at the end of it, yeah, you'll find him guilty because he did, in fact, not comply with your regulation. But when you do find him guilty and you fine him, we're going to reimburse his fine." That was what came to me. And then after that, I thought, why couldn't you do that on a big scale? You have the Legal Aid Society that defends poor people who have legal problems. How about if you had a large legal defense fund that took on people like this, ordinary Americans, took them on in large numbers, and litigated the cases to the max, created as much publicity as they could for the cases, and reimbursed the fines. And what do you accomplish by this? You provide some disincentive for the bureaucrat to enforce a regulation where the violation has not caused anybody any harm. The number of examples of this are legion, and I'm hearing more and more of them as after the books come out, but I'll give you one that's in the book. A brick-making company was fined $7,500 because they did have railings on stair landings that were exposed and people might fall otherwise, but their railings were 40 inches high, and the OSHA regulation says they should be 42 inches high. They did not have a sign saying poison on a shed. The shed contained beach sand. But beach sand has been classified by OSHA as a poison because it might cause certain ailments in certain grinding operations, none of which occurred at the brickmaking factory, but they didn't put a poison sign on it. Okay, these are not outrageous exceptions that hardly ever occur. What happens with the regulatory state is they have inspectors come in, and they've each have their favorite 3 dozen regulations that they remember, and they're different ones for different inspectors, and they basically just go around and find these kinds of silly violations and pursue them. What you want to do is give them a reason not to do it. You're familiar with the sports saying, no harm, no foul? In sports, you have, in the NBA, for example, a philosophy that if a foul occurs but it doesn't affect the action of the play, you just ignore it. That's what I want to force the regulatory state kicking and screaming to do, to adopt a no harm, no foul, that they enforce those regulations that, in fact, involve a serious issue where the harm occurred because the regulation was ignored.